What is up, YouTube? What is up? We are here with Mr. Scott Blair. It's not Blair, y'all. It is not Blair. It's Mr. Bair. Falcons Digital is. Let me give you. I'll let you introduce yourself because I don't want to mess up your title. So let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, for one thing, going back to my kindergarten teacher, people have called me Scott Blair. So no one is the first anymore and hasn't been for a long time. But yeah, Scott Blair, digital managing editor, was just a fancy word for I write a lot of stuff for AtlantaFalcons.com. We got a couple podcasts, including shameless plug number one, the Falcons Final Whistle Pod, and that comes out once a week with me and Tori McElhaney. And yeah, man, just enjoying I guess this is my 11th month out here in the ATL, loving it, love covering the Falcons, and love getting to know passionate members of this fan base.
For you, so where were you before? If people don't know, where were you before, and tell us a little bit, about a little bit more about what you were doing there.
Yeah, well, I've been a West Coast guy. I grew up in San Diego. I went to UCLA, and then I covered the San Diego Chargers. That's how old I am. They were still the San Diego Chargers. And then I for the San Diego Union Tribune, the newspaper down there. And then I covered the Raiders for NBC Sports Bay Area. It's the regional sports network, the equivalent of, let's say, Bally Sports South. And then the 49ers for a little bit, and then headed all the way 2,500 miles across the country for this great opportunity. And really a great chance to meet so many cool people and really be a part of the NFC South. I've been around long enough where heading into last year, the only two stadiums I had never been were Bank of America in Charlotte and Mercedes-Benz, if you can believe that. So yeah, I got a chance to experience Atlanta, experience one of my last two NFL stadiums, and here we are.
Yeah, so getting into some Falcon stuff, getting into mini camp, rookie mini camp. So we've been through two mini camp. Well, we're going through another mini camp. We've been through one mini camp. We went through rookie mini camp. What have you seen in your eyes being there and actually being to see those guys, develop and seeing them play? And what do you see about the team? What do you like? What has it been these early couple of stages?
Yeah, I mean it's very early, and when you go through these rookie mini camps, let's be honest, the level of execution is not high, nor would it be for anybody doing something for the very first time. And as a matter of fact, I believe it was new quarterback Desmond Ridder after day one, where you have execution mistakes and issues and people not lining up in the right spot. He didn't care. He was still basically saying, look, guys, no more pre-snap penalties, no more jumping before the snap. Really showed great leadership. Drake London, he was out there moving a little bit, and he looked pretty good, but everybody's just kind of getting their feet wet, really, and they're trying to learn this system. And the veterans have been in as part of the offseason program for a couple weeks now. They're starting to get on the field. We still haven't had our first OTA yet, but that's coming as well. It is pretty cool, though, just being around the Falcons complex, maybe more than most media members, just seeing the vets and the rookies start to interact. I think that's really exciting. I think there's a reason to be a bit pessimistic about this team because of all the roster turnover and all the one-year deals that are being signed and executed and all the dead money, right? Other side of it is I think there's a lot of well-placed optimism based upon this draft class. I think there's some good, talented, hungry guys. This seems to be a team, just talking to a lot of these draft picks, they're all real chip on your shoulder guys. I think Arthur Smith, as we saw in his story with The Athletic earlier this morning, is very passionate about, we want to win. We want to surprise people, and we want to prove people wrong. And if that's the tone for this season, that's probably the right one, because the expectations are pretty low. But what I've seen is a bunch of hungry guys trying to learn the system. They will get better, and it'll be interesting to watch this evolution as we move through the summer.
For you last season, because this last season was your first season, and for you, was it? Well, of course, you had Matt Ryan, you had the vets on this team. We lost Julio, of course, but you still, does it have that same energy? Do you feel like this team still has that fighting chance? Because we all felt, because we had Matt, we had a fighting chance because he was just that guy. He was that veteran for us. for this team, we don't have that, I guess you would say, safety blanket because, like you said, roster turnover and things like that. For you, do you feel that same energy in the building as if Matt was still there?
Yeah, I think it's a different vibe and not in a bad way. Matt, from my experience, and of course, there was a lot of COVID, protocols going on last year, but Matt, from my experience, had a really firm control and a level of stability that was over that team. And there were still some veterans present. They actually traded Julio my first week on the job, so that was
Oh,
fun.
wow.
But nonetheless, Matt had a real he just projected confidence, and I think there's confidence from the guys on this roster, but I think it's less about having that veteran stabilizing force. And now you're seeing guys. I think the energy is higher because there's so much youth on this team, and even the veterans on the team. So many of them are working on prove it deals, right? They're motivated by trying to go into another contract year next year. So I think whether it's the young guys trying to prove themselves or the older guys trying to reestablish themselves, there's a real hunger and intensity about what they're doing. And I think that that's encouraging. Now, is that going to automatically add up to 12 wins?
Yeah.
Probably not. But but I think it's a good attitude. It's a good foundation that they're hungry, they're driven, and I think they want to do and believe that they will do better than most people expect.
So going into we get into we'll get into some position roster, moves.
Sure.
Casey Hayward, of course, was a big signing for us. You get a cornerback too, and you didn't draft a cornerback, so that he's kind of the guys we've signed. You've got to see some of them, even if we're not really on the field, you still got to see some of them work. What is the chemistry that you see? Well, I'll go. I guess I'll start O line. O-line wise, because a lot of people feel like this O-line isn't experienced because of last year, because they're going from a quarterback that could stand in the pocket, wasn't really a maneuver to Mariota or Ritter, whoever we think is the starter. Do you think it's a turnover for this team or that it helps this team a lot more because there's a mobile quarterback? This O-line, I'll say this O-line.
Yeah, I definitely think so. They're still at a pretty early phase of this offseason program. So we haven't really had a chance to see, let's say, the entire line working with the entire offense versus the entire defense. So in terms of chemistry and things like that, you really don't know. The one thing is that offensive line really relies on continuity. And at this point, while there will be competition at several spots, it's very possible that you have the same starting five that you had last year. Now, again, they brought in Elijah Wilkinson, they brought in Jermaine Ifedi to compete at left guard, to compete at right tackle, to compete at center with last year's 4th-round draft pick Drew Dahlman and Matt Hennessy. So there will be competition, but in terms of them being aided by mobile quarterbacks, I think that you can be, but it's kind of a different gig when you're up front and you never know when the quarterback is running. You kind of always knew generally where Matt was going to be in this pocket that you're creating. And now all of a sudden you could have created that pocket and then, there goes Marcus. And then all of a sudden you got to move and shake. But I think it will help the offensive line. They won't have to just stand there and form that pocket and hope that they can sustain it. So I do think that it will help. I think that it's crazy. You look before they drafted Drake London, and it was kind of like Kyle Pitts and Cordero Patterson and what? And Drake London just adds a different element to this group. They still need more. Let's not forget that they just traded for Brian Edwards, a former Raider who I was around when covering the silver and black when he got drafted. So this offense has a lot more firepower than it had even last month. So I think all those things are steps in the right direction. How they come together, we don't know. But I think that the mobility at quarterback, especially pairing Marcus with Patterson, I think could be a really dynamic combo. Having those guys, whether they're just working RPOs or Marcus is moving into the flat, and then Patterson can take the ball from him, even on a short pass. I think that Arthur Smith will have a lot of options, and I think that line will be aided. by the fact that there is a mobile quarterback back there. If it's Marcus or if it's Desmond, both guys can move.
I guess we already talking about him, so we'll get into it. Marcus Mariota versus Desmond Ritter. We got to see them work out today. They worked out the vets got to be around the roots. What are your expectations going into training camp between those two? Because we know it's competition, even if it's friendly competition, it's still competition between those two. Do you expect Ritter to start maybe sometime this season, or do you think if because I don't think Marcus is going to get hurt anytime soon. I think he's healthy. So for you, do you think it's going to be a slow transition, like maybe he starts next year, or do you think if we're at a certain point this season where we're losing, we'll throw in Ritter?
I think that's gonna. I'm not trying to cop out of this answer here, all right, and I'm definitely not trying to hedge bets. But
wow,
I know, right? I'm already trying to hedge.
You got to give people a little bit of a taste of something.
Just all right.
It's an exclusive look, Scott. It's an exclusive interview, man. You got to give us something, man.
So I do think that Marcus is going to start the year as the starter. I think he'll have the opportunity to earn that 16-game opportunity. I don't think that if he's playing well, but maybe the team's record isn't good, I don't think they just go to Ritter to find out what they have. I don't think that that's the move, especially after you've heard from Arthur Smith time and time again and again in this morning's athletic interview. He was pretty adamant. He's there to win football games. He's not there to experiment with lineups. So if Marcus is playing well, and he will, in my opinion, have the first crack at it, he plays all 16. Let's not forget this guy was the number 2 overall draft pick for a reason. And after he was signed by the Falcons, I got a bunch of texts from all my old Raiders buddies, and they were like, "This guy's better than people think. That he's really evolved as a quarterback. He's still got it, and he's supremely motivated." Now, he's going to have to be accurate. He's going to have to be functional in this system. He has to be a lot of things to establish himself and keep this starting job. Because as we've seen and heard from Desmond Ritter at every single turn, he is motivated to be that starter. He wants to learn and be respectful, but he's going to compete all the time for any job, for any reason, in any situation. And that's what you want. Desmond Ritter is a winner, 44-6 in his college career. So you just don't know how fast a rookie is going to develop necessarily, especially in a new system with the faster speed of the pro game. So a lot of it is going to depend on Desmond. But I still go back to this, is that if you're going to have Marcus be the starter at the beginning, right? And in the preseason, they share a lot of reps. They share preseason playing time. Once you get to the regular season, the starting quarterback takes, 90% of all snaps. But the opportunity as a backup to continue to develop by doing like a lot of practice as opposed to working with the scout team goes down. So I think it's possible that Marcus starts all 17 games. That's what I think. That's me not hedging bets. I think it's very possible he starts all 17 games if he can stay healthy and he can play well.
That's of course that you might have just made some people mad saying that, but
I'm ready for it. At Scott Blair NFL, light it up.
Of course, I think when we go into we'll go into the running back room. You go and draft Algier. We cut Mike Davis. We kind of, in my eyes, replaced him with Algier, kind of sort of in the same style of running. I wouldn't say in the locker room, maybe it's different, but I would say in the style of running, we kind of replaced Mike Davis with the North and South. This is a question towards the running backs, but Cordell Patterson, do you think he's going to be a running back or a wide receiver this year? And in that running back room, with the talent that we have, what do you think Arthur Smith would do with it?
Yeah, I think CP will be a backfield contributor. How's that? I think that's where he's going to line up. I think he'll take some carries inside the tackles, and they'll do a lot of things with him that they did last year. I think maybe they'd also like him to get hit a little bit less because as a running back, even when you don't get the ball, you're still in pass pro. You're still taking a lot of contact. They have Damian Williams, who I think could be kind of an underrated signing. And then of course, Tyler, who after talking to him on Saturday during his rookie minicamp press conference, and then again a couple days ago for a rookie video that we have coming out, I believe in the next month. I think this guy, the more what he told me was the more he gets into the playbook, the more he realizes, oh, that play plays to my strengths. That play plays to my strengths. North and south, one cut runner, guy that can go up and initiate contact and break tackles. When I asked him who he likes watching run the football, he said Nick Chubb. He said Marshawn Lynch. Those are the types of contact initiators that I think are going to function well. So I think Damian Williams and Tyler Algier are going to have plenty of opportunities to carry the ball, in which case you can use Patterson in a bunch of different ways, not in like gadgety ways, but maybe not in, we're going to give him 25 carries per game.
Do you think that saves, some steam off of his body? Because let's hope we do make the playoffs, and you kind of want him, you want to make sure he's complete. You want to make sure the whole team is healthy. But because of what his role, and we know what he has talent-wise, because the Saints game last year, he really, that route right there really won us the game. That fly route he ran really won us the game. And we know he can run up in multiple positions. Do you see a Debo Samuels, not Dion, but Debo Samuels type of kind of career, like a season for him? Or do you think it's more he's going to be at running back?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more like that Debo kind of a thing, because that's kind of what he was doing last year. And I think his role sort of evolved. He'll also be more knowledgeable when it comes to the running back position. So I would anticipate him doing a lot of different things. I still think he lines up in the backfield quite a bit, but I don't think he has to be a 20 to 25 carry guy. I don't think that suits him best. And I think you look at the impact that he made last year and how much of a fun surprise he was, how entertaining he is, how much of a fan favorite that he became. I think that you want to continue playing to his strengths. And in my opinion, that's getting him the ball in space. Whether that's passes out of the backfield, whether that's him just finding the outside corner where he can turn it on. I think there's lots of opportunities for him. But, I mean, he would never say, carry management or load management. But I think it's one of those things that you want him making maximum impact. And since, in my opinion, their running back room is far deeper than it was last year, and hopefully with Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bryan Edwards, they're not quite as reliant on him. I felt like there were times, maybe in like the second half of the year, where Kyle was getting consistently double teamed, or it was like Patterson or bust. And I don't think that as an offense, you want to fall into that trap, because it makes Patterson worse. It makes Pitts worse, and it kind of grinds your offense to a halt. So Arthur Smith, one thing he's really good at, I really like him as an offensive schemer, as an offensive play caller. Maybe that'll upset everybody too. But nonetheless, I really think that that he's good at playing to the strengths of his personnel, as opposed to saying, this is my play, I know it works, execute it better. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that will help get the most out of Patterson. And so will the fact that there are just more guys around who can be active. Now, of course, the roster is very thin, so you need to keep those guys healthy. That's an absolute must. But nonetheless, I think Patterson will be used as a running back, but not as a feature back as we would think of him, kind of maybe Nick Chubb like. But I guess even he has Hunt as a backfield partner. So look out for Williams. Look out for Algier, I think, to make an impact, especially on first and second down.
Going into, you want to go, Mike?
I kind of thought, kind of piggyback off what you said, kind of something that really intrigued me as far as how Cordero was used last year, and I thought he got better towards in short yardage situations and goal line situations when the Falcons needed to score.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as though like that's the role? Not so much a gadgety player, but he's going to be used as one of those. All right, we need a first down. We need this. We need 2 yards here. We need to get in the end zone. You think Cordero will fit in the offense as far as like being an important playmaker in the offense, not so much a gadget guy?
Yeah. Like, and I don't think that gadget guy works for him anymore. I covered him when he was with the Raiders, and that may have applied more there. I don't think that it applies here, and I think he is good in the red zone. I mean, he scored 10, 11 touchdowns last year. It's one of those things where if it's an absolute foot race, he's going to win, and he's pretty tough. But they got a couple big backs back there. That was a real struggle point for them, right? 3rd and 1, 4th and 1.
Yeah.
That wasn't good enough. You've got to win in those situations. I think they have bigger. They have more size in the backfield, and they have speed at quarterback. I think both of those things will help them in those types of situations. But I do think that Patterson, it's hard to say what he's going to be, and I think that's okay because so much of what we even talked about last year is the whole concept of positionless football, right? You see how much Kyle Pitts moves around. You see how much Patterson moves around. I mean, maybe Brian Edwards is more of like a standard X, right? But I think that you have a lot of guys who can move around, who can do different things. And even if we can't say he's definitely a running back, he's definitely a 3rd down back, if we can't assign a specific role to him, I don't think that's a problem. There was a point midway through the year that I stopped calling him a running back. I stopped calling him a former wideout. I just called him an offensive weapon. And I think that works. I think we should just put that on his football card. OW. That's what he plays.
Okay, so we didn't mention Quadre, but I think somebody in the comments said something about Quadre. Do you think Quadre plays a bigger role this year as well? Because we, like you said, we have Algier, we have Williams, and we do have Cordell. Do you feel like Quadre still plays a big role on this team?
I think it's one of those situations where there's only one football, right? And now you can talk about Tyler and what he will and won't do, and I think that he's a good player, and I think he has real promise from what I've seen of his college highlights. I haven't watched every BYU game, but he's also a rookie who has to earn it. And he's going to have to earn carries. He's going to have to show that he can protect the quarterback on 3rd down. He has to earn his role. I think that Patterson is in kind of a separate category. I think that Damian Williams has the experience that you normally look for. So
did he lag? I think he lagged.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drafts a younger guy.
Hey, Scott, you lagged out a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was basically saying that he's going to have to earn his touches. He's going to have to earn his role. And it's probably not going to be terribly easy because they just drafted somebody and they brought Patterson back and they signed another veteran and they still have Keith Smith back there. You think about how many running backs are they really going to keep? Are they going to keep 5? That's a lot. So it starts to become roster math. And so, again, this is going to be a very important offseason program and training camp. One thing I've learned about him, one thing I've learned about a lot of these guys, we talk about hunger, right? I'm never counting anybody out. I'm never saying he's not going to make the roster. He won't get carries. But I will say if you look at the composition of that position group, he's going to have to go out and earn it, and he's going to have to go out and prove it. The one nice thing is that Arthur Smith rewards guys who earn it, rewards guys who prove it.
So for you, let's talk about this basketball team that we got out there, tight end and wide receiver. Let's talk about this starting 5 we got out there. Of course, you got Pitts. You went and got 2 centers at tight end with Pitts and Fitzpatrick. And then you got Drake, who is a 6'5" possession that we've had a discussion on this channel about where a lot of people don't think he has speed. I want your opinion on that as well. So for you, what do you think these guys, because you have Zacchaeus, you brought in, you got the Hodge, you have the smaller receivers, but you got a basketball team.
Yeah.
So do you think he goes with the basketball team and kind of incorporate Zacchaeus and Hodge at like if let's say he has if he has a 4 wide receiver set, who do you feel like would be in that 4 wide receiver set?
And in a 4 wide, if you're going to break it out, so you probably think maybe you don't have a running back, right? So I'll say in that pattern, you probably got Pitts, you probably got Patterson, you got London, and you got Edwards, or you can mix OZ in there if you still have CP in the backfield. And like, think about that. I think the one thing that everybody thinks about Drake London, and he's big, right? So that means he's an outside receiver. Not really. He played inside, I think his sophomore year, maybe. And so and I think that he has a good understanding of how to play from the slot. So you look at the height, you look at the ability to create separation. And Drake, I really like that what he said, because he kept getting asked about his 40 time, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if wide receivers only run straight without any contact or any interruption in the course of 40 yards. But he basically said, that he said he ran, I think a like 4.5, and then he said, sometimes people think that I'm, quote, covered, right? That I'm covered, but really he's not. And I think his ability to create separation functions a little bit differently than maybe some others who use raw speed to get open. So I think his ability to play inside makes them really difficult. You could have Pitts on the outside, Edwards on the opposite sideline, London in the slot, and OZ in the slot, and Patterson somewhere. I just think that there are lots of opportunities, but I also think that, and Brian Edwards has this too, he averaged 17 yards per catch over 2 years with the Raiders. You see big catch radius. I covered Michael Crabtree. He wasn't a giant, but he could catch anything within his fingertips, right? That was just something that he did. And I think that that's valuable. And this isn't a knock on the quarterbacks, but if you look at who they have, the completion percentage for Marcus is in the low 60s, maybe. 60s. You want to give big catch radiuses to these quarterbacks. I think those two things can really play well. So yes, it's height. Yes, it's physicality. It's also the ability to go get it anywhere that I think is going to serve the Falcons well.
That's what we've been wanting to hear from somebody else besides us, because a lot of people feel like that Tate and Edwards and a lot of those bigger guys that we went and got aren't going to make the roster off of pure thinking that they don't have enough speed, because everybody thinks speed is such a killer thing in the NFL, where, like you said, you run a 40-yard dash, you're not running 40 yards straight down the field every play. It's more, like you said, physicality, running and stuff like, route running and things of that sort. So you're going into what we saw from Drake. I know you were at Ricky minicamp and you got to see, him run some routes, run some things. What was his route running to you? Like, what, if it reminded you of anybody, what did his route running remind you of? And like, I know they probably didn't do like one-on-ones and 50-50 balls and stuff, but like when he went up to go catch the ball, if Ritter maybe slipped up and he threw it high, was it just something that like surprised you seeing his athleticism?
I wouldn't say that. The tough part is that the viewable portions of practice are often done about half speed. So I want to see pads come on, and I really want to see guys get out there before I can judge watching somebody live. I will say that I'm from the West Coast. I went to his rival school, go Bruins. And my friends tell me basically every time I have to compliment Drake London. But nonetheless, I've seen a lot of his college games, and he is a dominant force in the pattern. You go back and we actually ran a pretty cool story about when when Drake London really hopped on their radar, and it was USC versus Colorado. You go back and you watch that highlight tape and you learn all you need to know about that dude. I mean, and sure, he's boxing people out, and he is maybe using his size to go up and catch the ball in tight traffic. He's also jumping over people to get into the end zone. That there's just, and I know it's college competition, it's different, but just in talking about his raw skill set, I think it's more well-rounded. I think it's developed for how old that he is. One thing that I will say is he's a big dude. Like, he's a big dude, and he looks big in the pattern. He moves smoothly. Again, I'm going to reserve judgment on it about exactly how he looks, how crisp he is, because I want to see him go full speed. I want to see AJ put his hands on him at the line of scrimmage before I can say for sure.
Right.
But the early signs, in my opinion, are positive. But again, I need to see more. I need to see, Casey Hayward, AJ kind of get up in his grill and see how things go there. But I think it's positive so far. And, I've seen a decent amount of Brian Edwards. It's weird. Raiders fans don't like him. He has an unrefined route tree. He's a big dude who can go get the ball. If you go back and watch his college tape, he was man among boys. I'm
a Georgia fan, so I know Brian Edwards. I know he
really
used to
liked Brian Edwards.
Yeah, I didn't like Brian
at least 3-4 times already.
Yeah,
I'm in the club too, man. But yeah. So this wide receiver core got a lot better. Still has a long way to go, right? And it's funny because Arthur Smith says, look, I'm not going to discriminate based upon height. If somebody's good and they're 5'11", I'm gonna go get them. But okay, and that's true. But look at the track record. But if you're a bigger wideout, and I'm not saying anyone is AJ Brown, but if you look at what he's done with bigger wideouts, if you're a bigger wideout, I think that you should be encouraged. And sometimes you have to look for those types of comps, not saying AJ Brown is Drake London is anybody else, but you look at how AJ Brown was used, and you look at what he was able to do with the Titans personnel, and you can try to make projections from there. I mean, heck, it's May. That's what we're doing here, right? We're trying to figure out what this team is on paper and where they need to develop to be competitive. So if you go back pre-draft, I think this wide receiver core needed a lot of help. I still think they need some help, but I think that they've made strides in a positive way. I think the Edwards trade, basically swapping a 5th for a 7th and getting a guy who's not even 24 yet. I think that those are positives. Talk about a basketball team. You also have a team that can barely drink, right? Kyle Pitts is 21. Brian Edwards is 23. Drake London might be 22, right? That you have a bunch of young guys who can develop with this group. And I think those things are positive. Talk about big, talk about young. And now it's just a matter of getting them the ball on time in a place where they can break tackles and make plays.
Yeah. Defense. We'll go over to the defensive side of the ball. I think we touched every position on the offense. If you have any questions, I'll open it up towards the end. I'll show you. I know if you got questions in the comments. When we get towards the end, I'll let Scott answer some of them. But defense. This is a different defense. We lost Foye. We lose some other key pieces, but we bring in, y'all guys were saying earlier, we brought in Casey Hayward. We brought in D lineman. We go and get Arnold. And we go and get AK. I was trying to say his last name.
There it is.
Yeah. You go and get Arnold. You go and get Tony Anderson. You go and get pieces to fill pieces we lost. But we'll start in the trenches. Everybody wants to talk about the trenches. We go inside. We give Grady an extension. Did you feel like we need to draft a D tackle to be next to Grady in this draft? And did you like the AK pick?
I did like the AK pick. I thought it was bold that they went up and got their guy. They got rid of a 4th-round pick. I think that was another good value move. And it was very clear. It's so weird. I'll try not to go off on too much of a tangent here. And I'm going to
got time. You got time.
So if you look at the draft, right, and there's so much that, I work for the Falcons, but they're not telling me who they're drafting, unfortunately. But there's so much about it that we as fans, as even NFL media, don't know, right? So you see those top 3 edge rushers go off the board, Walker Hutchinson and Thibodeau. And then you think, well, Jermaine Johnson's going to fit somewhere. Maybe that'll be Johnson. And Johnson slides all the way to 26, right? Or you know that you see the Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean go into the third round because of a medical, right? That you see these slides that you think are slides, but it's because the teams all know something that the analysts don't. So it's a surprise because we haven't heard it yet. The reason why I say all that is that you look at how the draft went, and they started the run on wide receivers. So they got to like whether Drake London is the right pick or not, we're not going to know that yet. But the Falcons had a chance to take the wide receiver that they wanted, as opposed to the fourth edge rusher or the fourth offensive tackle, right? So at some point you have to look at the draft not as what they needed next year, but what they could get at the time that they were allowed to get someone. So, and that brings me back to the Penn State guy, right? When you look at AK at 38, that's pretty good value for a guy who really produced at a high level, playing for a big school against high level competition. Talked to him this afternoon for another one of those rookie videos. This is a dude that didn't move to the U.S. till he was 13, didn't start playing organized football till he was 15 years old. He was a wide receiver until he was a junior. I mean, he just has a lot of raw physical talent that we're starting to see come together. And I think that's exciting. I can tell you for a fact the Falcons were overjoyed that they got him. They did not want to wait until 43. So when you look at what they got, receiver, okay, that's whatever, best player on your board. That also happens to be need, right? And then you get it early into the second round. A good player on the board also happens to fill the other major need. So I thought it was important that they got him. And it brings me back to that. Did they need a defensive tackle? Yes, they do need one. They need one of those big body, let's just say it, Jordan Davis types, right? But they need a player like that, or they need just a big one tech who can just sit there and occupy gaps and eat blockers, right? They didn't get that here. It's a bummer because Grady could definitely use one. They have Anthony Rush coming back. But it's one of those things where you look at what they got and when they got it, and I feel really happy about that. So it's a very long-winded way of saying, do they have a defensive tackle need? Yeah. But this is a multi-year project where you're going to try to get a valuable one where they can get one. So it's going to be Grady and Anthony Rush. They're going to – and look, they drafted – a couple in the last couple of years. Marlon Davidson, we keep talking about him. Potential. Need more from him. Need more from Taquan Graham, who's kind of up in there. So they've got some youth, right? But can they get more out of them? So that's 2 minutes, but nonetheless, hopefully you guys can see like where I was.
I get what you're saying.
This wasn't the time to get one, right? Like that's what the difference is.
Okay, so for TQ, last season I knew TQ. I didn't think TQ was going to get a lot of playing time because of his size. For me, I didn't think he was big enough to be D tackle. And of course, we went and got Rush. But that DN competition for me is what I'm kind of interested in, because you have Lorenzo Carter, you have Ogundeji, you went and got Arnold, you went and got AK. I don't know why I can't think of the other name.
D'Angelo
Hall,
and
D'Angelo Hall.
Ogundeji.
Yeah, and you have Ogundeji, Hall, you have Lorenzo, and then you have AK. So the competition, let's say we run a 3-4, right? Mm-hmm. You only have 3 down linemen, and we know Grady's one of them. So those other 2 spots for you, what would you think that we would put Rush in the middle and then kind of rotate that last edge rusher on the other side? Or do you put them in that 3-4 and you put them at linebacker and see if they can cover as well?
Yeah, I think that, to try to describe Dean P's defense is impossible. He probably has a playbook that's bigger than an unabridged dictionary. So, he calls it multiple, so that's what I'll call it, and that's probably accurate. But he's another guy that I think really plays to strengths. So when you look at it and you look at Anthony Rush is a good first and second base defense player. Grady Jarrett is one of those 3-down players who can kind of be right inside next to him. And then after that, you really have to kind of work out who can help you on run defense and who can help you rushing the passer. And there's always a good rotation on the inside. They need more consistency from Marlon Davidson. I think I liked what Graham did at the end of the year when he got some more opportunities. So it's going to be about those guys figuring out kind of a steady rotation and kind of where each guy can help, because they don't have 3 down players across the board. So you look at it that way, and then you look like you're going to have 2 kind of edge rushers, whether they're defensive ends or just kind of wide 9 outside linebackers, and kind of where do they fit. I think that's going to come down to run defense a lot, because that was one area where I thought they were lacking. I think Dante Fowler was they played Stephen Means a ton, because
be honest about Dante Fowler, please. Please be honest about that. Please.
I think that Dante Fowler was a more willing run defender, but I don't know if their edge rushers were effective setting the edge in a way that was required to stop, especially mobile quarterbacks, but in general, kind of basic runs that kind of stretched you. So in terms of being able to say, well, he's going to play here and he's going to play there, it's going to have to be a mix of who can be good against the run. I would anticipate that Arnold Ebikite, yes, ended up playing a lot. I think Lorenzo Carter, I don't know. He had 5 sacks last year. He was kind of allowed to walk. I think this could be a good stop for him. Of all guys who are free agents, like I know what Casey Hayward is, but I'm really excited to see what Lorenzo Carter can be in this defense. So I think he's going to be heavily in the mix, especially as a more veteran presence. And then Ade's going to have to earn some snaps. D'Angelo is going to have to earn some snaps. I mean, this guy is a rookie. There's so much that we don't know, but they will need contributions from their rookies. So I think it's going to be a mix of guys on the inside, but they need better and more consistent run defense, and of course rushing the passer off the edge. They just need better. 18 sacks is unacceptable under every circumstance. Anytime you get beat by an individual like TJ Watt, like what happened last year, that's just not good enough. You need to get after the passer. You need better run defense. That was their biggest need. It's probably still a need for them, but they have to keep chipping away and doing better at that edge rusher spot.
Getting into the linebackers, we actually just did a show called The Miseducation of Deion Jones.
Okay.
Because this fan base, if you've seen the fan base on Twitter, a lot of people are saying trade Deion because he doesn't fit the system. We'll put quotes around fit. Doesn't fit the system. So for you, we go and get Tony Anderson. Troy Anderson. We go and get, we go into these side linebackers. Do you still feel Deion is that linebacker and that he still is that voice of the defense going into next year?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird because if you looked at the linebacker core last year, it seemed like the most stable group, like entering last year, it seemed like the most stable and established position that the Falcons had with Deion, with Foye, and with Michael Walker. And losing Foye was that was a difficult blow if you looked at what they were doing defensively. So losing him, I think, was tough. They add Rashaan Evans, who a former first-round pick from who went to Alabama from Auburn, Alabama, the actual town. And he's my guess is he steps right in. Seems like all the Raiders just keep coming to Atlanta because they have Nick Kwiatkowski as well, who has a bunch of experience playing Mike and Will linebacker. So I think that those guys will kind of work themselves in. I don't know. It's tough because I didn't see Deion in 2020, but his stats are unreal, right? And he had 137 tackles last year, but I did wonder, is he a perfect fit for this? He obviously has that huge contract, and they've touched a lot of the other contracts, whether it was trading Matt Ryan or extending Jake Matthews or extending Grady Jarrett, that contract is still kind of hanging out there. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it all ends up with him. Kind of moving forward, they have a lot more options, but I still go back to what I've heard Deion Jones can be, right? And what he's put up statistically in a previous seasons. So that is kind of the real back and forth, right? Is he a scheme fit? We can do a whole show on that, right?
Yeah.
Is he a good fit for this team at this time at its stage of transition? We can talk about that too. It's at some point it's like, well, okay, if you want to move them, what are you going to get? And is it worth it to you? And how much will it impact your cap pre and post June 1? That there's so many factors that go into it because of the size of that contract that it's weird, because you're talking about business, you're talking about football. I can see how you spent a whole show on it because it's a complicated situation. The one thing is, I think that if he sticks around and they can get Deion Jones to play at a very high level, that's good for the Falcons. If it doesn't work out, they have a lot of new options and all these names that like we are talking about. And as a general manager, as a head coach, as a defensive schemer, that's what you want. You want options to be able to react to whatever happens. But again, it's complicated because you're talking about a supreme athlete. You're talking about a guy who's done it at a high level for a long time. You're talking about a guy that makes a lot of money. You're talking about X, Y, and Z. So it is a very complicated conversation.
I got to put you on the spot, Scott. I got to put you on the spot. You're Terry Fontenot. You're Arthur Smith. What are you doing with Deion, and why?
What am I doing?
He had to take a sip of water.
Yeah, what am I doing with Deion and why? I'm of the opinion, again, I look back at 2020's numbers, and I am so enticed. And I'm also looking at that contract, and it is big, and it will be less difficult in the future. So my instinct says keep him. My instinct says keep him there, coach him up, give him some responsibilities, allow him to move around and do what he does. And that's what I would say. I would say keep him because 2020 and even 2016 and so many years in the past are so enticing. He's not old. He's still fast.
Right.
It's just a matter of, can they work it with the contract? That's always a factor. And how much of a benefit is it? Now, if somebody wants to offer me a second-round pick, okay, right? That's also a factor as well.
Secondary, we'll go into the secondary. We'll get after that. We'll talk about Arthur and Terry, and then we'll end it after that. So secondary, like we said, we're bringing up Casey Hayward. We're bringing up these. They say we kind of signed the Bears. Let's be honest. Ryan Pace has been a great addition to this team because to the front office, because Ryan Pace has gotten a lot of these guys that he worked with in Chicago to come down here on these 1-year prove-it deals. And these are guys that are going to have to come and prove it. We went in, we got, I almost said Robert Alford. What is his name? Alfred Glow. I call him Glow because of his Twitter. You go and get him from Canada. You want to go get a lot of these guys that, are experienced vets. Like, we didn't have to go draft a cornerback this year. Like I said earlier, we didn't have to go get one. Do you think at the long run we still go and get one, maybe next year's draft or the year after next? And what do you think this secondary, because we bring back Eric Harris, who is he's a fan favorite for me. I love Eric Harris. I love his story. Mm-hmm. Going to know that we have the two safeties in Jalen Hawkins and oh my God, why did his name just slip my mind? Mike, what is his name?
Grant.
Yeah, Jersey Grant. So you go in Hawkins and Grant. Do you think that those two are going to be the starters next year? Or do you think Eric Harris can still reprise his role?
I think I know I've known Eric for a long time. Another former Raider.
Oh, former Raider.
So many of them. So many of them. But I never count Eric out of anything at any time. It's just not how he's built. As you mentioned his story, it's a guy who came from the CFL, was working in a potato chip factory, and found his way to be a consistent starter. I do believe, and I'm going to write a story about this on the website coming up, that I talked to Arthur Smith a while ago about his long-term vision for Richie Grant. And it was never to be a 3-down starter last year, right? And then Isaiah Oliver gets hurt and he's asked to do some different things. That was never part of the plan to insert him and let him play 3 downs. So he didn't disappoint last year. He didn't mess up. He grew as a player, and I think he'll continue to grow as a player. I think he and Jalen Hawkins are going to have a great opportunity to kind of be the younger generation at that safety spot. I think both guys are definitely capable. I really like Jalen Hawkins too. And when you look at what those young guys can bring, and Eric Harris is kind of a safety valve there, I think the safety spot could be more athletic for sure. Will they be better? I don't know, but I think they could be more athletic. And I think that we talked about this time last year, I would say linebacker is the most established and consistent. And now I think with AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward, you look at that combination. Now, Casey's not young anymore. I mean, I'm not young anymore either, but
he's
in
not.
his
Well,
early
I feel like
30s.
he's not the Casey Hayward that everybody can remember, back in the day. But he's still Casey Hayward.
The thing about it is every time that somebody probably says that about him, he goes out and he has another incredible year. And he may be older, but he was my favorite signing. I was a huge fan of him in Green Bay and San Diego with the Chargers, if I get that right. But I think those two guys are good. And it's crazy how much Isaiah Oliver kind of flipped the script on. I think when I first came, he might have been the second player that I wrote a story about, and fans did not like him at all.
Yeah.
And this time last year, and I think they came around because they realized that he could be a useful asset playing in the slot in Dean P's scheme. So he's going to be back healthy. I think those cornerbacks look good. I think if the young safeties can kind of take over, I think that's a positive. Casey Hayward signed to a 2-year deal. You can never have enough cornerbacks though, right? You're going to need a slot corner eventually as well. So I think that's one of those things where Terry Fontenot says that every position is eventually a need, because at some point in the player's rookie contract, you're going to need some help there. And that's accurate. And you can never have enough good cornerbacks. It's like I would draft a cornerback in every draft till kingdom come. But I just think I like where they are. I like what the potential of the secondary is. Do they need help from the pass rush? Heck yeah. But it's one of those things that I'm encouraged by what they've done there. And I think it could be interesting to see how that group pans out. I think they should have a lot more confidence in their secondary than they had last year.
Yeah. I feel like the secondary in itself, we didn't give up a big pass play as we were one of the only teams that didn't give up a 40-yard plus pass play. Right. And I give Dean Pease his credit because the way we played off a little bit, like our safeties played deeper, so we're getting burned a lot. And now I feel like if we do have the youth, we can play a little bit closer. Not all the way like we're right at the 10-yard line, but we can still play a little bit closer to being able to help them press. Like if they got to press, we can still be right there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the youth does for us, because we can move a little bit faster in the secondary. What is well, we'll go into we talked about doing a lot of we know we have to get a punter. We know we have to go get Mike echoing. We know we had to go get a punter. We know we have to go get we have a punter. Tori wrote about him and told him he was like, is he 6'5"? I can't think of his name.
Seth Vernon is a massive human being.
Yeah, he's like 6'5", isn't he, or something like that? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's a crazy thing for a punter. But special teams wise, we know Cordell. Do you think I ask you this? I think Cordell's going to break the record next year if he gets out there. I think I wanted to be in the Falcons uniform. It's kind of like when Devin Hester broke the punt return in the Falcons uniform. It was even if he wasn't the best on the field, it was just cool to be in a Falcons uniform and see it. But Cordell is an important factor for us. So it'd be a lot more important if he broke it in our uniform. But is there another returner you think that can arise? Because we know we have Avery Williams, who is going to probably be punt and kick. Do you think Zacchaeus is going to make the roster off of being actually a wide receiver or a special teams player?
I think he's going to make the roster on being an offensive player. I think he still has a role. Arthur Smith has said time and time again that he's one of his favorite pros, just how he goes about his business, how consistent he is. And I think that that's an asset for a wide receiver room that's still, even with Drake London, right, is still unestablished. So I do think that he makes it. I'm a big fan of Avery Williams and how he is, especially returning punts. you look at his college numbers and they seem like fake
Ridiculous.
stats.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just out of this world. So I think that's another asset. You've obviously got Youngway, who's as stable as it comes, and they do need an answer at the punter spot. They're going to keep trying to figure it out, but nonetheless, I do think that there's a lot of, I think special teams should be good. I really think that Marquise Williams is a pretty darn good coordinator. But you need those those special teams guys. I think they have a lot of those. D'Angelo Williams and Troy Anderson. Those guys are going to be young special teamers. Eric Harris is one of those every team special teams guys. I think all those things are going to be, important for a team that can't give away anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not the type of team that's going to win if they give up short fields all the time. They're not the type of team that's going to win if they make major mistakes on special teams in the coverage or the return game. So when you're a team like that, and you might have to win some close ones, you can't give that away. And that's where special teams comes up. It only shows up when it's spectacular or when it's terrible. You can have either one of those if you're on the wrong side of that. So all in all, look, I think this roster still needs some work. I think there's a lot more talented rosters in the division and across the conference and across the NFL. But I think that I am encouraged by what they've done this offseason. And I think it's one of those things, again, I said it earlier, where it's like you have to think about this in terms of what the 2022 product is. Like that's what we're talking about, because the major acquisition points are now all behind us. Free agency, draft, immediate post-draft signings. Those are gone. So we can talk about this 2022 product. But if you're talking about where the franchise is going, then you can loop around to the next acquisition points. They got over $100 million in cap space. You have another set of draft picks and all these other types of things. So you can look big picture and microscope at the same time. And that's what's fun about talking football in May.
So for you, well, this will be my last question. Well, I have a couple of questions in the comments. For my last question, you get to be around Arthur and Terry a lot. So you get to, talk to them. You get to interview them. You get to see them in their daily, around I don't know if you guys are in the same office, but around the office, you get to see those guys work together. So how do you feel about their connection? You can go singular about each one, but how do you feel about how they work together and how they work with their staff as a team?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. I really like it. It's two younger guys in terms of their age for their position. I think that they have a lot in common. They're both kind of like young fathers with smaller kind of toddler kids, and Terry's are just a little bit older. But I think they bonded on several levels, and I think it's interesting because they don't come from the same team or the same coaching / executive tree. That they come from different areas, but they seem to have come together with a unified vision. They talk about that a ton, about working together and building this thing as a unit. And you can see that in that Arthur Smith is a coach's coach, meaning other coaches think he's cool. And I think that they have a great deal of respect for him. And I think his staff does too. When it comes to Terry Fontenot and his staff, he's an engaging dude. He's very easy to talk to. He's very honest and forthright and genuine, but that's just on a personal level. In terms of his kind of executive management, that they're trying to get right with the salary cap. They knew the situation that they were in, and they're not buckling under the pressure to go for the quick fix when the long-term solution is better. I think that's important. Sometimes you have a bad year and or maybe not up to expectation, and you want to abandon everything. And I don't think that they're doing that. So I really like the way that they run the ship. I really like the way that they work together. And it's one of those things like you can say, all right, we're in lockstep. To me, it really seems like that. And you can really see that over the course of the NFL draft. It wasn't just Terry's draft. It was the Falcons draft. This isn't Arthur Smith's offense. It's the Falcons offense. And that can just be semantics, but it also sends a message to everybody in the building of where I work that this is an inclusive process. And you talk to some of the lower level scouts or some of the younger position coaches, and they feel that when you're invested, you're more likely to work your butt off for those people. So I think they're establishing a good foundation as they're trying to usher in a period of sustained success. Will they get there? I don't know. Neither do
Nobody knows.
anybody else, right? We don't know yet. It's so hard. You have to make so many right decisions and to build the depth and to get the right star power and do the right thing with your money and then get a little injury luck and. So we don't know how this is going to turn out, but we do know that I believe that they're doing it the right way. Will they finish it right? We don't know yet. They don't know yet, but I think they've established a good foundation for how they want to run their ship.
I want a little tea, Scott. Scott, I want a little tea. Have you heard any arguments? Have you heard anything in them when they're arguing over a certain play or arguing over a certain move or decision? You know, you just catch it, you walking by the office and just hear them yelling at each other.
Yeah, I'm not in on the headsets necessarily during game days. No, you don't see those guys arguing very much. Arthur has a very dry sense of humor, which I really appreciate because I'm a pretty good deadpan guy myself. So it's always nice that you can joke with these guys and it's not like, football's over here and all of the, support staff is over here. It's a very inclusive environment. I've worked with, I don't know, 6, 7 head coaches now. I really like Arthur tells it like it is, blunt. He's a very smart dude. So I've really enjoyed being around them. I'm sure they have debates, but I'm not in those meetings necessarily. But I'm sure they can disagree. But from what I've seen, they always come back on the same page, and I think that's really the most important thing. You're allowed to disagree. Terry Fontenot invites disagreement. He wants to hear passionate opposition, but I think they do a good job of kind of coming out of those discussions with a unified front.
That was my end of my question. I have a question from anybody in the comments. If you have a question, let's get them out. We're over a little bit. We're supposed to be on 45, a little bit over. I have a question. It was from Noah. He said, okay, I gotta find it. He said, "What, Scott? Who are the next 3 players you're extending on their contracts?" He said, on their contracts.
Okay, well, I'm definitely extending AJ Terrell when he's eligible, which I think is next year, and I'll just because he's not getting any cheaper, I wouldn't say. So you might as well go ahead and lock that one down. The next 3. That's an interesting question about the next 3 because now I have to think about who's coming up more recently. You're going to have to pay Chris Lindstrom. I would pay him, no doubt about that. So I would say that's number 2. And now I'm kind of frantically trying to search through the rest of their kind of draft classes and things like that.
That's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to think who is.
Yeah, but I mean, I think those are 2 guys that you believe are foundational players who are coming up towards the end of their deals. And I know that they missed out on him because they weren't in a good financial situation, but I really wanted them to keep Foye.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't a per source reporting, but I think they wanted to keep Foye too. He was just a good, genuine human being and a very good football player, an ascending football player. And but he went out. I mean, you only get so many times to get paid, and I would go get paid too. Trust me. Yeah. But that was another guy that I really thought was deserving. But nonetheless, I mean, AJ and Chris, I would definitely earmark money for both of those guys.
Well, I guess I don't see any questions. Thank you, Scott. Please, thank you for coming on. You guys follow Scott Blair. It is at Scott Blair NFL on Twitter. That's your tag, right? Scott Blair NFL on Twitter. Let's go. If you're on the Falcons website, you probably read enough of his articles. If you were a draft head like I was, and some of you guys were in the comments, you probably read a lot of his mock drafts that he had. We had a lot of disagreements about certain stuff, but like you said, at the end of the day, we all came to an agreement. We didn't know. Nobody knew what it was going to be. Okay. So you said thoughts on Rayburn being an old tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, undrafted free agents are going to have to earn it. I've read some stuff that people at Boston College really liked him, that's one of those guys that you're going to have to watch play out. But I would, I never want to bank on undrafted guys. The one piece of, I don't know, news nugget or piece of trivia that I do have on him is Desmond Ridder is really passionate about being the first guy into the building every day. It's one of his things. And he said on the first day of a rookie mini camp, Tyler Vrabel beat him in the door. So he was the first guy in that one day. But when it comes to offensive line, I keep my eye on Jermaine Ifedi. He's a guy with some starting experience. He can play guard. He's played guard at a high level in college. He has been a right tackle. I would expect him to compete. Where he falls out, I don't know, but I'd keep a close eye on that. I think there's going to be some open competition for those offensive line spots in the starting 5 and outside of if they keep 8 or maybe 9 guys. There could be some battles. Tyler Vrabel will certainly be involved in that.
Noah, will we get another interview from you, Scott, in August? Here we're months apart, and people already want another interview. This is it's up to Scott. If I'll make sure, Noah, we'll talk about it.
Hit me up.
We can.
Yeah, I can go back during the summer. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I can come back then.
Definitely want to have you back on. Thank you everybody that watched. Eric, to your question, if you go back towards I think it was 20-30 minute part we talked about Algier. You want to go back and listen to it. Like I said, if you're watching this at a later time, please leave a comment, like, subscribe to Matt, Mike, Fila, GHSM, whatever channel you're on. Please go and watch. Scott on Friday Night Madness would actually be really funny because you'll get to meet the fan base and how they really think. So thank you. Everybody wants you to come back, Scott. You're a fan favorite.
Appreciate
thank
y'all,
you
man.
again,
That's awesome.
man. As much as, like I say, if you're on the Falcons website, make sure you pay attention to his articles. The Falcons YouTube channel, make sure you guys are subscribed on there and follow the stuff they do. Really, the podcast.
Yeah.
Throw on the podcast. Make sure you guys, and of course, you guys know Tori. You guys, we didn't thank you. I want to from me, if you can tell Chris, thank you for what he did while he was here. Thank you for the documentary that he did on the team. Gave me a lot of knowledge because I'm young. I'm only 20, so it gave me a lot of knowledge on that team. I wasn't even born yet, so I didn't even know a lot of that stuff. So I want to, personally tell him to thank you. With that, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. Like I said, like and subscribe. I'm a plug, Scott. Use code FILA on Prize Picks for 100% deposit match. Please do, y'all. You spend 100, they're gonna give you 100 back. You don't have to spend your own money. If you look, Falcon season's, it's coming up. You want to bet on those games. You want to think passing yards. Anything you can think of a prop bet is going to be on Prize Picks, and bet on it, man. I mean, I don't encourage gambling, of course, but make sure that if you do use code FILA on Prize Picks, you'll get 100% deposit match. And with that, I got to go all the way down here to get to my outro. With that, we're out of here. Peace.